Another feed inside, and Stuckey finishes! Clark's 8th assist!
Even before she ever played a minute in the WNBA, before packed arenas and historic attendance numbers became normal, Caitlin Clark had already pulled off something rare. She dominated the business side of the sport. While she was still in college, still representing Iowa, major American brands were lining up to attach their names to hers. Companies like State Farm, Nike, Wilson, and Gatorade weren't waiting to see if she would succeed at the professional level. They already knew. She wasn't just a great player in the making, she was a cultural force, a marketable star whose influence stretched far beyond the court.
That's there for you every step of the way.
How did she pull it off, and what did she grasp that others completely missed? She didn't wait for validation on a professional court. She flipped the process, becoming a branding powerhouse first and changing the endorsement playbook in the process. This is the story of how one young woman reshaped corporate America's approach to athletes, and why companies everywhere are scrambling to understand the insight she recognized long before anyone else. To understand how Caitlin Clark took over the advertising world, you have to look at her roots, not box scores or highlight reels, but the narrative behind them. Because that narrative is what unlocked everything that followed. She was a teenager in Des Moines with a shooting range that seemed impossible and goals that ignored conventional limits. She was firing shots from distances coaches usually forbid and knocking them down repeatedly with a belief that looked reckless at first glance, until it became clear it wasn't bravado at all. It was certainty. She knew the result before the ball ever left her fingertips. And here's the crucial part. Caitlin Clark wasn't just competing in basketball. She represented an idea. She spoke openly about being a kid from Iowa who dared to dream far bigger than anyone expected.
All started as a little girl in Iowa. Caitlin Clark's only option to play basketball was on the boys' team.
She spoke openly about opportunity and the work required to turn dreams into outcomes. She mentioned sacrifice too, like skipping her high school prom without regret because something bigger mattered more. None of this was rehearsed or polished by media handlers. There was no PR script or manufactured persona. It was simply her reality. A visionary who outworked everyone else to bring her goals to life. That genuine identity, built on drive, discipline, and conviction, became the backbone of everything that came next. Companies weren't just endorsing a basketball player when they partnered with Caitlin Clark. They were investing in a narrative. And authentic stories carry more value than any collection of highlight clips. Then came the State Farm moment. The first shift happened in an unexpected way. State Farm, an insurance brand rather than a shoe company, apparel label, or drink sponsor, was the first major business to truly understand what Caitlin symbolized. They signed her before she ever went pro. They featured her in nationwide advertising. And they made her the first NCAA athlete, male or female, to step into that role.
In college basketball, Iowa's Caitlin Clark became the leading scorer in the NCAA Division I basketball, woman or man.
They became the first person ever featured in one of the company's advertisements. Consider how bold that move was. She had not logged a single minute as a professional. She had no pro titles. She was still officially a college athlete, operating under freshly updated NCAA NIL rules that were barely understood. The NIL era itself was uncharted ground, a chaotic testing phase where brands had no clear blueprint for success. Most corporations moved carefully, sticking to low-risk, regional endorsements and limited experiments. State Farm saw all that uncertainty and dismissed it. They recognized a once-in-a-generation opening and chose to act immediately. What truly made the deal genius wasn't just the contract, it was how it was executed. Athlete ads are usually awkward, forced, and lifeless, with players stiffly delivering lines while pretending to enjoy it. Caitlin flipped that script. She was sharp, understated, and naturally humorous without trying. The delivery felt authentic. The pauses landed. The reactions felt real. She wasn't performing. She was simply being herself, and the camera responded. Then came the turning point that elevated the spot beyond advertising. The logo range moment didn't just sell insurance. It created a phrase. It became repeatable, shareable, and instantly recognizable. Fans echoed it online. Young players copied it in highlight edits. What started as a commercial became a cultural reference point almost overnight.
promotional Nike commercial just in time for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Tonight, Rebecca Petit has the message.
The momentum exploded across every major platform in a way brands spend fortunes chasing and almost never replicate. That was the instant executives understood this wasn't a typical endorsement situation. This wasn't just an athlete selling a product. This was a cultural accelerator. Someone who could turn half a minute of screen time into a shared language, a reference point, a viral echo that lived far beyond the ad itself. Without forcing it, without overproduction, without trying to manufacture hype, she made it feel organic. That's when corporate America realized Caitlin Clark wasn't marketable in the traditional sense. She was a shortcut, a rare anomaly who could move attention effortlessly. And that realization set the stage for the next seismic shift. Nike hadn't aired a Super Bowl commercial in 27 years. They had walked away from the biggest advertising stage in the world because they believed nothing justified the cost. Until this moment.
Gainbridge, the ultimate assist for your savings. But ever since they teamed up.
After almost 30 years away from the most powerful advertising platform on the planet, Nike stepped back onto the Super Bowl stage, a place reserved for bold declarations. This is where brands gamble enormous sums, where a brief half-minute costs more than many firms spend in a full year, and where executives agonize for months over every frame. When Nike chose to return, their options were endless. They could have leaned on an established legend with a long resume of successful campaigns. They could have selected an internationally recognized star whose image already symbolized greatness worldwide. They could have played it conservative with a face advertisers had trusted for years. A choice designed to minimize risk and maximize certainty. Instead, they bet on a 22-year-old from Iowa who hadn't logged a single minute as a professional. That single decision explains exactly who Caitlin Clark is to them. Nike wasn't searching for comfort or guarantees. They were chasing energy. They were chasing attention. They were chasing undeniable cultural pull.
Basketball, Caitlin Clark was signed a multi-year sponsorship deal with Wilson, maker of the WNBA's official basketball.
They were searching for a face strong enough to shoulder a Super Bowl comeback and turn it into a moment, not just another forgettable spot lost in a flood of commercials. That audience is the most valuable in marketing and also the hardest to hold, flooded with constant spectacle where most ads vanish from memory minutes later. Nike needed a presence that could break through the chaos. Someone whose attention felt deserved, not purchased. They surveyed the entire American sports landscape, every league, every star, every discipline, and concluded no one could cut through like Caitlin Clark. The ad itself avoided spectacle. No explosions, no famous cameos, no overproduced tricks. Instead, it leaned into emotion and simplicity, honoring the path of a kid who became a symbol. Caitlin spoke about sacrifice, about skipping prom, about competing with intensity and dreaming without boundaries. The commercial made her relatable and iconic at the same time, reminding viewers that beneath the highlights was a real person who earned everything through work. Nike recognized that her authenticity was the product. They didn't need to invent an image, only spotlight the one she already owned. That same philosophy carried into Gatorade's approach. Most endorsements are formulaic. A face, a product, a quote, a paycheck. Gatorade went another direction. They didn't just want her likeness, they wanted her perspective. Together they developed a hydration and recovery bottle built specifically around her real training habits, not a standard item with her name stamped on it. Something designed to match how she actually prepares, performs, and recovers. The response was instant and massive. The product sold out in days, not weeks. Days. Because fans weren't chasing another generic ad. They wanted something rooted in her real life, something that felt like a direct connection to the tools she used to become Caitlin Clark.
On its basketball products, plus be Wilson's ambassador, and of course, we'll have all kinds of new collections.
Gatorade recognized the same truth that State Farm and Nike had already figured out. Caitlin Clark herself is the brand. When a product mirrors her character, her habits, and her path, it moves instantly. When it feels artificial or detached from who she really is, audiences spot it right away. The brands that win with her are the ones that step back and allow her to remain authentic instead of forcing her into a manufactured image. Then arrived the partnership that redefined what athlete collaboration could become. Wilson, the official basketball supplier for both the NBA and WNBA, entered the picture and shifted the entire model from endorsement to true creation.
This, as you might imagine, is a pretty good advertising opportunity.
The brand that has produced professional basketballs for decades, longer than many athletes have been competing, did not treat Caitlin Clark like a typical promotional figure. They were not interested in her simply posing with equipment or smiling for advertisements. Instead, they invited her into the process as a true creative partner. She became the first woman ever to help design a Wilson signature lineup. This was not a standard sponsorship arrangement. It was a genuine partnership between an international sports manufacturer and a young player they believed could add real insight to how products are built. That difference is critical. A traditional endorsement says, "We want your image connected to our name."
Right side, now come back to your favorite spot again. It doesn't matter if there's a hand in her face contestant.
A true partnership says, "We want your insight, your viewpoint, your feel for the sport embedded into what we create." And Wilson made it clear they saw Caitlin Clark as more than a promotional figure, recognizing her as a true student of the game whose knowledge could genuinely elevate their equipment, trusting her enough to share creative influence in a way no major gear company had ever done with a female athlete before. She became the first, and that alone reshaped expectations. The campaign tied to the release felt nothing like traditional sports marketing, and Nike leaned fully into that tone. It was restrained and reflective, avoiding the loud spectacle most ads rely on, focusing instead on sneakers squeaking on polished wood, a ball echoing in an empty gym, a long-range shot falling cleanly through the rim. It wasn't pushing merchandise, it was conveying emotion, the solitude of loving the game, the unseen hours, the calm intensity of repetition and discipline. It played like a tribute to basketball itself, framing Caitlin not as a spokesperson but as a steward of the game's essence. Wilson clearly understood that her appeal isn't rooted only in skill. It comes from the fact that she loves basketball the same way the audience does. She plays with visible joy, reacts with raw emotion, and competes with a fire that feels deeply personal. By naming her a co-designer, they acknowledge that she doesn't merely symbolize the sport, she lives it, and that bond with fans carries more value than any conventional sponsorship. What most people overlook when trying to explain her dominance off the court is that it isn't chance, timing, or talent alone. She has three rare traits brands crave and almost never find together, starting with an effortless on-camera presence where nothing feels forced, nothing is exaggerated, and nothing is performed. She doesn't try to be engaging. She simply is, and that genuineness translates instantly, with a natural sense of timing as instinctive as her shooting form.
I love Caitlin Clark. I play basketball, so it's just good to see how many people are starting to focus and look on women's sports and watch women's sports.
She understands exactly when to pause, when to respond, and when to let a moment linger. Most athletes need direction for every second of a commercial, but Caitlin Clark simply arrives and performs naturally, no coaching required, effortlessly delivering the right energy in the right moment. The second reason is her emotional narrative, the story of dreaming big, putting in relentless work, giving up everything, and becoming a symbol of inspiration for the next generation is universal, and it reaches far beyond basketball.
A top WNBA pick, Caitlin Clark, her first pro game 10 days away, but even before she makes her pro debut, she has a major Nike deal on the line.
She understands exactly when to pause, when to respond, and when to let a moment linger. Most athletes need direction for every second of a commercial, but Caitlin Clark simply arrives and performs naturally, no coaching required, effortlessly delivering the right energy in the right moment. The second reason is her emotional narrative, the story of dreaming big, putting in relentless work, giving up everything, and becoming a symbol of inspiration for the next generation is universal, and it reaches far beyond basketball. It transcends sports entirely. Anyone who has ever wanted something badly enough to give up other things for it can see themselves in her journey. That emotional resonance is what turns a commercial from forgettable into unforgettable. People don't remember products, they remember feelings. And Caitlin Clark makes people feel something. The third quality is cultural movement. When she does something, fans don't just watch, they imitate it. They recreate it. They share it. They turn it into memes, edits, and trends that spread across platforms without any corporate push. Brands spend billions trying to manufacture that kind of organic engagement, and they almost always fail. Caitlyn generates it naturally, effortlessly, just by being herself. That is the difference between an athlete who sells products and an athlete who creates moments. Products are forgotten the day after you buy them. Moments become part of how people remember an era. Now let's talk about the records she's already broken. These aren't small achievements. They're industry-changing milestones. Each one alone would be a career-defining moment. Taken together, they represent a complete transformation in how the marketing world understands athlete value. She became the first NCAA athlete, male or female, to appear in a national State Farm commercial. Think about what that means. State Farm has been running athlete campaigns for decades, featuring some of the biggest names in sports history, and they chose a college player to break new ground. She also became the first woman to headline Nike's return to the Super Bowl after a 27-year absence.
Here's Clark. Wow!
Nike could have chosen anyone in the world. They chose her. She became the first female athlete to co-design a Wilson signature collection, a company that has been making basketballs for nearly a century, deciding a 22-year-old had something to teach them about their own product. She became the first Gatorade athlete to launch a recovery-focused product built around her actual training methods. Not a generic endorsement. A custom product line. These aren't incremental achievements. These aren't small steps forward. These are transformations. Each deal represented a company doing something they'd never done before because Caitlyn Clark made them believe it was worth the risk. Every deal she signs, every commercial she films, every product she launches pushes the entire landscape of women's sports forward. She is raising the WNBA's profile in ways that decades of standard advertising never could. She's giving the next generation of female athletes a blueprint to follow, a proof that this level of achievement is possible if you have the talent and the authenticity to back it up. She's showing corporate America that backing women's sports isn't a charity case or a PR stunt meant to make companies look woke. It's smart business. It's profitable business. It creates cultural moments and drives real consumer interest. The impact of her success will last for years. Every female athlete who lands a major sponsorship in the next 2 decades will owe part of that breakthrough to the path Caitlyn Clark blazed. She didn't wait for approval. She didn't wait for the industry to decide she was ready. She showed up, performed at an elite level, and forced the market to adjust to her instead of the other way around. So what's next? After Nike, State Farm, Wilson, and Gatorade, marketing executives across the country are asking the same question. What's left to conquer? The answer should intimidate her rivals and excite her supporters. Everything. There are no limits. She isn't confined to the narrow lane most athletes are pushed into. Traditional sports marketing says basketball players sell sneakers, drinks, and apparel. That's the playbook. That's what the industry understands. But Caitlyn Clark has already proven she doesn't follow playbooks. She rewrites them. Her appeal is wide, genuine, and culturally powerful enough to go beyond any single category. She can sell lifestyle brands to young professionals who see her as a symbol of ambition. She can partner with tech companies looking for someone who represents innovation and boldness. She can work with financial firms targeting a generation that wants to see themselves reflected in the faces behind the ads. She can anchor streaming projects, documentaries, and media ventures that turn her story into entertainment beyond basketball. The brands circling her now aren't just sports companies. Apple is watching. Netflix is watching. Amazon is watching. Major banks, luxury fashion houses, startups chasing credibility, media companies hungry for content that connects with younger audiences. They're all studying what State Farm and Nike recognized early. Caitlyn Clark isn't just an athlete endorsement. She's a cultural gateway to an audience traditional marketing struggles to reach. The only questions left are who moves first, what kind of deal will be unprecedented, and whether the rest of the industry can adapt quickly enough to keep up. Because whoever signs her next isn't just getting an athlete, they're buying a front-row seat to the future of American advertising. Before she ever played a WNBA game, before arenas packed in record numbers, Caitlyn Clark had already done the unthinkable. She won the marketing game. Still in college, still wearing Iowa, the biggest brands in the country were fighting to put her face on their products. State Farm, Nike, Wilson, Gatorade. How did she flip the rules of athlete marketing before even turning pro? What did she understand about connection, culture, and influence that the rest of the sports world missed? She didn't wait to prove herself on the court. She became a commercial force first, rewriting the endorsement playbook forever. This is the story of how one young woman from Iowa forced corporate America to catch up to her vision, and why every brand is now racing to figure out what she saw before anyone else did.